The cold wind whipped across the barren cliffs, carrying with it the scent of frost and forgotten dreams. Ilara stood at the edge, her cloak wrapped tightly around her shoulders, yet it offered little warmth. The world she had once known, bright, safe, full of laughter, had been torn from her. Her mate, the one she had trusted with her heart, had cast her aside, leaving nothing but a hollow ache and a trail of unanswered questions. Her feet carried her without thought, drawn toward the darkened lands at the edge of the kingdom. Stories whispered of a cursed place, where even the bravest knights dared not tread. It was said that the Alpha who ruled there had once been revered, a leader whose strength could command mountains and rivers alike. But the curse had changed him. Now he was a shadow of what he had been, feared, powerful, and lonely. Ilara did not know why she went there, only that some part of her believed she could find meaning in this desolate land. Perhaps it was the way her heart had been shattered, leaving her open to the strange and dangerous. Perhaps it was the pull of something she did not yet understand. The first signs of the cursed territory appeared as the sun dipped behind jagged peaks. Trees stood twisted and blackened, their branches clawing at the sky. The air was heavy, thick with an almost tangible sorrow. Ilara's steps slowed. She had never believed in curses or legends, yet the silence, broken only by the wind, made her wonder. From the shadows, a low growl rolled through the trees, deep and resonant. Ilara froze, her pulse quickening. Her instincts screamed at her to run, yet her feet remained rooted. A figure emerged from the gloom, a man, taller than any she had ever seen, with hair as dark as midnight and eyes that gleamed like steel. His presence commanded attention, not with words, but with the weight of his very being. "Who walks in my lands?" His voice was calm, yet it carried an unspoken authority, echoing against the cliffs. Ilara's throat tightened. I mean, no harm?" she said softly, her voice trembling despite her efforts to stay steady. The Alpha studied her, tilting his head. There was something in her, the way she carried herself, even in fear, that stirred a flicker of curiosity in him. Few dared to venture this far. Fewer still dared to speak. "You are far from the safety of your home," he said. "Why come to a place of shadows?" Ilara's hands clenched around the edges of her cloak. She wanted to explain everything, the betrayal, the loneliness, the endless nights of wondering why she had been cast aside. But the words felt too fragile, too small to carry the weight of her pain. Instead, she said, "I seek something. I do not know what." Kyle, the Alpha, studied her for a long moment. His curse had twisted him, but even now, beneath the shadow of rage and sorrow, he could recognize the strength in another soul. He sensed that this woman, abandoned and yet unbroken, might be more than she appeared. "You are not like the others," he finally said. "They come and they flee. They seek power, or wealth, or pity. You." His gaze softened, though his eyes remained sharp. "You seek truth." Ilara's chest tightened. She had never heard anyone speak to her with such clarity, as if they could see the fractures in her soul. For a moment, the wind ceased, and the world felt unbearably still. "I do not know if I will find it here," she whispered. "But I cannot turn back. Not now." Kyle's eyes flickered with a light she could not name. "Then you shall stay. You may walk the cursed lands, but know this. The shadows are not merely in the trees or the wind. They lie within those who enter. If you are not careful, they will claim you." Ilara nodded, though a part of her did not fear the darkness. Perhaps because she had walked through her own shadows already. Perhaps because she sensed that this Alpha, despite his fearsome reputation, had walked through them too. They moved together through the twisted forest, Kale leading the way, though he said little. Occasionally he would glance at her, silently judging, silently warning. At night, they made camp under the skeletal branches of a massive tree. Kale's presence was overwhelming, yet not threatening. It was as if the world itself had shrunk to this small fire, this fragile connection. "Why do you help me?" Ilara asked, the question escaping before she could stop it. Kyle's gaze lingered on the flames. I am not helping, he said. I am observing. You have been broken, I can see it, and yet you move forward. You are not afraid of what you may become. Elara swallowed, feeling a lump in her throat. I do not know what I am meant to be, she admitted. I only know I cannot be what I was. The Alpha turned to her fully, his presence like a storm contained. Perhaps what you were is not what you needed to be. Perhaps what you are becoming is far greater than you imagine. That night, sleep came fitfully. Shadows whispered, at the edge of her vision and dreams of her past life, of the mate who had abandoned her, haunted her, yet beneath the fear there was a strange exhilaration, a sense that she was on the edge of something vast and dangerous, a truth that could not be found in comfort or safety. Morning came with a silver haze, revealing the full extent of the cursed lands. Rivers of black water wound between jagged cliffs. Mist clung to the rocks like the remnants of forgotten spirits. Elara shivered, yet she felt no urge to flee. There was a purpose here. She could feel it, even if she did not yet understand what it was. Kale led her to a ruined temple at the heart of the forest. Stone statues of long-dead kings and warriors loomed over them, their faces eroded by time. This was once a place of power, Kale said. Now it is empty. And yet... He paused, his voice low, almost reverent. Even in ruin, it holds the memory of what was. Elara stepped inside, brushing her hands over the cold stone. The air was heavy, but it felt alive, as if it remembered the footsteps of those who had come before. She turned to Kale. What is this curse? She asked softly. Why is your land so broken? Kyle's eyes darkened. The curse is not just mine. It is the fear and greed of generations twisted into shadow. I am its keeper, its prisoner. None can enter without facing what they fear most within themselves. Elara's heart thudded. She understood in that moment that her journey was no longer about revenge or sorrow. It was about confronting her own shadows, just as Kale had been forced to confront his. And perhaps in doing so, they could find a way to heal. Not just the cursed land, but themselves. As she stepped closer to the altar at the center of the temple, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Her former mate emerged from the shadows, his expression unreadable. The sight of him brought a rush of anger, betrayal, and a pang of the love she had once felt. Kale's eyes met hers, dark and unreadable, and in that instant a tension unlike any she had ever known gripped her. She realized that nothing in her life had prepared her for what would come next. The past, the curse, the Alpha, and her own heart, all collided in a moment of impossible choice. Her former mate spoke, but his words were drowned in the sudden roar of the wind. Kale moved slightly in front of her, his posture protective, his presence a wall between her and the past. Elara's chest tightened. She had expected fear. She had expected sorrow. She had not expected this pull, this impossible draw toward the Alpha who had haunted these lands for centuries. And yet, even as her former mate's eyes sought hers, she knew that the path forward would not be about returning to the life she had lost. It would be about stepping fully into the shadows, into the unknown, and perhaps finding a power, a bond, and a truth that neither she nor Kale could have imagined. The wind howled through the ruined temple, carrying with it the scent of frost, shadow, and a promise of trials yet to come. Elara clenched her fists, her heart racing, knowing that the first step had been taken, but the true journey, the one that could change her fate forever, was only just beginning. And as Kale's eyes met hers once more, she understood that the story of abandonment, shadow, and forbidden power had only just begun. The ruined temple still echoed with the wind's mournful howl when Elara finally spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Why are you protecting me?" she asked, glancing at Kale. Her former mate stood frozen a few steps away, his presence sharp and intrusive, yet it felt as though the distance between life and shadow stretched far wider. Kyle's eyes, dark and fathomless, met hers. "I do not know yet if I am protecting you," he said slowly. "Perhaps I am merely keeping the past at bay. But there is danger here, more than you realize." "More than even you realize," Elara swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. She did not fully understand what drew her to him. the Alpha, whose name whispered through legends of fear and power. There was something magnetic in the way he moved, something commanding yet quietly vulnerable beneath the surface. She wanted to step closer, to understand him, yet the shadow of her past made her hesitate. Her former mate, however, took a step forward, his voice laced with false certainty. "Ilara, come with me," he said. "You do not belong here. You do not belong with him." Cale's jaw tightened, a storm barely contained behind his calm exterior. He did not move toward the man, yet his presence pressed upon him like a living force. "Do not step closer," Cale warned. "You have no claim here. Leave or you will regret it." The tension in the air was thick, almost tangible. Ilara felt herself torn between two worlds, the past that had hurt her, and the unknown that whispered promise and danger in equal measure. Slowly, she stepped back, glancing at Kyle. I cannot leave," she said softly. "Not yet." Cale's gaze softened imperceptibly, though his aura of power remained. "Then you will stay, and you will learn what it means to face the shadows without fear." The man from her past scowled, frustration and anger warring across his face. Finally, he turned, muttering threats under his breath, and disappeared into the forest's dark embrace. Ilara exhaled, relief mingling with unease. She could feel the weight of what had just passed, the dangerous interplay of old bonds, new power, and the fragile thread of trust slowly weaving between her and Cale. They spent the following days moving deeper into the cursed land, each step revealing more of its twisted beauty. Black rivers cut through jagged cliffs, reflecting pale skies and ripples that seemed almost alive. Trees stretched like gnarled hands toward the heavens, their leaves long gone, leaving only skeletal branches. Spirits of the past seemed to whisper through the mists, testing the courage of anyone who dared enter. Cale remained near her constantly, silent but watchful. He taught her to read the land, to sense the subtle movements of unseen creatures, and to understand the energy that pulsed in the cursed soil. Ilara listened, absorbed in the lessons, yet her mind constantly returned to the strange pull between them, a connection she could not name, yet could not deny. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire, Cale stopped at the edge of a vast chasm. The wind whistled between the jagged rocks, carrying the distant cries of unseen creatures. "This is the first test," Kyle said, his voice calm, yet edged with warning. "The curse will try to reach you here. It feeds on fear and doubt. Only those who face what they carry within can pass." Ilara's heart pounded. "What will I see?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Your own shadows," Cale said simply. "The pain, the betrayal, the fear you carry, all of it will rise to meet you." She swallowed hard, forcing herself to step closer to the edge. The wind tugged at her cloak, yet she did not move back. "I am ready," she said, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. The air shifted suddenly, growing thick and cold. Shadows stretched across the chasm, forming shapes that twisted and writhed as if alive. Ilara gasped as memories of her past surged forward, moments of betrayal, loneliness, and fear. Each shadow whispered in voices she recognized, accusing, mocking, reminding her of the mate who had abandoned her. Kyle remained at her side, a solid presence, though he did not touch her. "Do not run from it," he said quietly. "Face it. Only then can you move forward." Ilara's mind screamed to flee, yet she forced herself to stand firm. She breathed slowly, centering herself, letting the memories pass like clouds across the sky. The shadows writhed, then faltered, dissolving into mist as she acknowledged the pain, allowed it to exist, and refused to let it control her. Cale's eyes softened as he watched her. "You are stronger than you know," he said, "stronger than the curse itself." For a moment the chasm seemed to calm, the wind easing, the shadows retreating, and then Cale's gaze darkened, focusing on a point beyond the mist. "We are not yet free," he said. "The curse has many layers, and there are those who would use your past to destroy you both." Ilara's pulse quickened. "Who?" she asked. Cale did not answer immediately. Instead, he led her to a hidden path along the cliffside, where the mist was thick and the stones slick with frost. As they walked, he spoke of the Alpha's past, of mistakes and regrets, of choices that had led to the current desolation. Slowly, Ilara began to see not only the power he commanded but the burden he carried, the loneliness, the pain, the constant vigilance required to survive in a world that feared and envied him. You have been cast aside, Kyle said quietly, almost as if he could read her thoughts. But do not mistake abandonment for weakness. You are here facing the shadows while many would run. That is strength. Elara looked at him, the words stirring something inside her, a mixture of fear, longing, and admiration. And you? She asked. Are you strong because of the curse or in spite of it? Kale's lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Perhaps both, he said. The curse has taken much, but it has also taught me to endure, to protect, to recognize strength in others. Their journey led them to a valley where the trees grew close and dark, their branches forming a canopy that blocked the sky. Strange creatures moved in the shadows, their eyes glowing like embers. Kale stopped, motioning for her to remain behind him. Stay close, he said. The curse is restless here. Elara did as he asked, watching as Kale's presence seemed to command the darkness itself. Shadows shifted and swirled, forming grotesque shapes, yet Kale stood unwavering, a beacon of calm in the storm. The creatures approached, their forms more terrifying than anything she had imagined, yet they stopped short, as if recognizing his authority. Elara's heart raced, yet she felt a strange sense of awe. Here was a man bound by a curse, feared by all, yet unbroken, and here she was, standing beside him, feeling a connection that defied explanation. As night fell, they made camp beneath the dense trees. The fire flickered weakly, casting dancing shadows that played across Kyle's features. Elara sat quietly, watching him, feeling the pull of something dangerous yet irresistible. You face the curse well, Kale said softly, but there is more ahead. You will be tested not only by the land, but by those who seek to exploit your past, your pain, and your bond with me. Elara's gaze met his. Then I will face it, she said. Whatever comes. Kyle nodded, a faint glow of respect in his eyes. Good, you must be ready, for what comes next will challenge everything you believe about yourself, about loyalty and about power. As they settled near the fire, the mist curling around them like living smoke, Elara realized that the world she had left behind, the life she had mourned, no longer mattered. She was on a path that would test her heart, her courage, and her trust, and Kale was both the danger and the protection she could not yet name, a shadow she could not yet resist. A distant howl carried through the valley, and with it, a sense of approaching threat. Elara's pulse quickened. She knew instinctively that the past was not done with her, that the forces of the curse were stirring, and that the next encounter could change everything. Yet even in the face of uncertainty, she felt something else, a spark of resolve, a flicker of hope, and the undeniable pull toward the Alpha who had claimed the cursed land, and somehow the corners of her heart she thought were lost. And in that moment, as the wind whispered secrets through the blackened trees, Elara knew that the journey was only beginning, and that the shadow she would face would demand courage beyond anything she had ever imagined. The first light of dawn crept over the jagged cliffs, brushing the cursed land with a pale, fragile glow. The night had been restless, filled with whispers of shadow and fleeting glimpses of the past. Elara sat near the fire, her hands wrapped around a cup of cold water, feeling the weight of everything that had brought her here. She was no longer the abandoned woman who had wandered through the frost-laden lands. She was stronger, braver, and more determined, yet the final challenge loomed before her. Kyle stood a few steps away, his silhouette framed by the rising sun. The curse that bound him still lingered, a heavy presence in every movement, but now there was something else. A spark of hope, fragile, yet undeniable. He looked at her, his dark eyes searching as though measuring whether she was truly ready. Today, he said, his voice low and steady, we face the heart of the curse. This is where your courage will be tested, where our bond will be tested, and where the land itself demands proof that it can be healed. Elara's chest tightened. She had learned to trust him, to rely on the unspoken connection between them, yet the thought of what awaited was terrifying. I am ready, she said, though her voice trembled slightly. Whatever it takes. Kale nodded once, sharp and decisive. Together they walked toward the center of the cursed valley, where the earth rose into a blackened spire, surrounded by swirling shadows. The air grew thick with tension, heavy with the memories of those who had suffered here before. Every step felt like moving through a living nightmare. Yet Elara held her head high, refusing to let fear control her. As they approached the spire, the shadows coalesced into forms that reflected their deepest fears. Elara saw herself again, abandoned and alone, but this time she did not shrink. Instead, she faced the vision, her eyes meeting her own reflection with defiance. Cale moved beside her, his presence steady, and she felt the warmth of his strength bolstering her resolve. "You are not alone," Cale said, his voice firm. "Never again." The shadows hissed and twisted, forming shapes of monsters and demons, echoing her past pain and the anguish of the cursed land. Elara took a deep breath, stepping forward. She extended her hand, not in fear but in acceptance. "I will not run," she said. "I will face you, all of you." The shadows surged, attempting to overwhelm her, but Cale's hand found hers. Together they pressed forward, moving through the darkness as if their unity could pierce it. Each step required courage, every heartbeat a declaration of defiance. Slowly the shadows began to falter, dissolving like mist in the morning sun. At the center of the spire, a mirror-like pool of black water reflected their faces. Kyle knelt beside it, placing a hand upon the surface. "This is the heart," he said. "It holds the pain, the anger, the betrayal of centuries. To break the curse, we must confront not only ourselves, but the echoes of all who came before." Elara gazed into the pool and saw countless faces, some angry, some sorrowful, some full of longing. For a moment she was overwhelmed, but then she remembered the journey she had taken, the betrayal, the pain, the lessons learned, and the strength gained. She reached out, her hand touching the water alongside Cale's. "Together," she whispered. The water shimmered, the reflections merging, and a warmth spread through her chest, unlike anything she had felt before. The shadows screamed, a chorus of fear and resistance, but Elara and Cale held firm. In that instant she understood. The curse thrived on separation, on fear, on doubt. By standing together, by embracing their strength and trust, they could undo it. A blinding light erupted from the pool, filling the spire, pushing back the darkness. The wind roared, carrying away centuries of sorrow. Elara felt herself lifted, her heart pounding, her soul vibrating with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Cale's grip on her hand was steady, unwavering, and in that grip, she felt the promise of safety, of belonging, of love that had been tempered through shadows. When the light faded, the valley was transformed. The twisted trees stood tall and strong, leaves of green whispering in the morning breeze. The river sparkled, free of blackness, flowing with life once more. The air itself seemed lighter, freer, as if the land itself had exhaled centuries of trapped despair. Elara turned to Cale, her eyes wide, almost disbelieving. "It's healed," she said softly. Cale nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Yes, but it is not only the land that has changed," he said. "We have changed as well. You faced the shadows and did not falter. I faced my own fear of being unworthy, and I stood with you." For a long moment they simply looked at each other, the silence filled with the weight of everything they had endured. Then Cale stepped closer, his voice a whisper meant only for her. "Elara, you are more than I imagined. Stronger, braver, and unafraid. I am grateful you chose to face this with me." Elara's heart fluttered. The bond between them, formed through trials and shared courage, had grown into something she could no longer deny. "Cale, I never imagined I could find someone who sees me, all of me, and still stands beside me," she said. Cale's hand lifted, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You are not broken," he said softly. "You are whole. And together, we are stronger than the curse, stronger than the shadows, stronger than the past." Their eyes met, and for the first time the weight of history, pain, and fear fell away. In that quiet moment, in the heart of a once cursed land now alive with light, they understood something profound. Love was not the absence of struggle, but the courage to face it together. A distant cry broke the silence, sharp and urgent. Elara's heart skipped a beat. "What is that?" she asked, tension returning to her voice. Cale's expression darkened, his senses alert. "The past is never truly gone," he said. "There are still those who would seek to undo what we have achieved." Elara stepped closer, her hand finding his. "Then we face them," she said, her voice steady despite the fear that tightened her chest. "Together." Cale nodded, and for the first time in centuries he felt a sense of hope that was not fragile but solid and enduring. The bond between them, forged in shadows, had become a force neither curse nor enemy could break. As the sun climbed higher, bathing the valley in golden light, Elara and Cale stood at the edge of the restored land. The wind carried the promise of new beginnings. the whispers of the past fading like echoes in a vast hall. The darkness that had once threatened to consume them had been faced not with fear, but with courage, trust, and unity. Ilara looked at Cale, her heart full. "Whatever comes next," she said, "we will face it together." Cale's gaze softened, and for the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future free of the curse, free of isolation, free to stand beside someone who truly understood him. "Yes," he said quietly. "Together." The fire they had built flickered between them, small but steady, a symbol of the bond that would endure. And even as distant shadows hinted that the world would continue to test them, they were unafraid, for they had learned the greatest lesson of all. The courage to face darkness was nothing compared to the strength found in trust and love. As the wind whispered through the newly healed valley, carrying the scent of life and renewal, Ilara and Cale stood side by side. The past, the curse, and the shadows were behind them. Ahead lay a world of possibilities, challenges, and new beginnings, together, stronger and unbroken. And in the quiet, golden light of dawn, they understood that the journey was not an end, but a beginning, a promise that even in a world shadowed by curses and fear, love and courage could prevail.